deals are bubbling up these days.
Do you want to own it for $1?
I did like that you are only 8 miles away from a large harness racing track and slot machine casino.
If it's a weird business, I'm totally in. Let's do it.
I'm not joking, you guys. I love that idea.
This is groundbreaking stuff here.
Do not publish this. I don't want any competition for this idea out there.
Welcome into the Real Estate Anonymous podcast, another episode. We are reviewing definitely the worst deal in Pennsylvania and possibly the worst deal in the country. If you have a gigantic pile of money and you'd like to turn it into a small pile of money, we can recommend buying this defunct mall outside of Washington, VA. We floated the idea of turning it into an 80s retro mall, harness racing of animals, people, and whatever, or possibly a movie set. We hope you enjoy it. All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome in Real Estate Anonymous podcast. We've got a special guest. Will is joining us from all nowhere, Pennsylvania, and he's currently captive in his car. You got to blink a few times if you need help, and if you're good, we'll let you introduce yourself. If you need help, Will's blinking. Okay. So after the podcast,
I'm actually doing Morse code.
Yeah, we'll send someone to come get you at the end of the podcast. Why don't you give whatever kind of intro you want to give, and then we'll go around the horn and see what's new in everyone's day.
Yeah, thanks, Elliot. We're doing a deal in Pennsylvania, so you had to get a resident Pennsylvania investor. I'm generally focused on multifamily and industrial, which means this podcast about a retail center is going to be great.
So I remember having a conversation with Will a while ago. Will, do you mind if I talk about some of your athletic prowess?
Oh, go for it.
So Will... was it pro ball? Did you play pro ball?
I did play professional baseball. I had a IRA with the Cleveland Indians, despite my old managing director at my private equity firm I used to work for, who tried to tell me that I didn't play professionally. No, they gave me money in exchange for mediocre pitching.
So I had lunch with Will a while back, and we were talking about this, and it was a great lesson on perspective, because I said to him, I go, fuck, man, you must have been an unbelievable pitcher. You must be very good at this. And he sort of paused and he said, well, in comparison to all humans, yes, I'm an excellent pitcher. But in comparison to the rest of the guys who did this for a living, I was fighting it out with them. God, fuck, what a great way to look at things. So thrilled to have you on, man. We got the usual cast of characters: Michael Girdley, Eric Weatherholtz, Brett Moss. I'm Elliot White. Let's go around the horn here. Eric, do we talk about acting on this show? Can we get any kind of insight into that? Oh yeah, that's true. We've only talked about one of Will's many talents. Acclaimed, soon to be Oscar nominated actor, I'm sure. Yeah, let's get a little insight into that. We have 0 other actors on this show.
Well, let's be honest. We're all acting because we all aren't in the real estate business. We're just pretending like we are.
Selling something.
Yeah. No, it's easy. I didn't get enough attention being the sole person with a ball in the sport that I played, so I needed to do something else.
And that led to?
Yeah, just trying to, try my hand as an actor until I make some money doing real estate. But yeah, I've been in a couple of TV shows, and hopefully a movie or two come up.
I love it. See, Girdley, look at Girdley. He doesn't even know.
I had no idea. I just know he was an anonymous, very interesting Twitter account that I like a lot.
What's a deal around here?
It's amazing. No, I'm stupefied.
Eric, what is new in the world of weird real estate for you?
The weird deals are bubbling up these days. I think the rising rates have turned covered land plays into actual possibilities, things that folks, as the development world is grinding to a halt, far less competition for the juicy development sites that happen to have a property on it. So we're seeing a little bit of increased deal flow. What about with you, Brett?
I'd agree with the comment that rates are not going to go down 87 times this year, like some people thought at the beginning of the year. And so that reality is settling in. And I think, as I've said on prior podcasts, that when your primary business plan is hope, that is always a tough proposition, I would say. I don't think they teach you that in Harvard MBA. But yeah, I think a lot of people are just holding on for dear life at this point, and surprised more distress hasn't come up. But we're certainly starting to have opportunities with groups that might be in a prep for an LP equity position. So I think it's going to get interesting here over the last 6 months.
Girdley, what are you seeing?
I'm not doing much real estate. I'm doing all try to keep businesses going. But I did have a fun real estate thing happen recently where we're trying to sell a property, and my lawyer and the seller and the buyer got into a screaming match with each other, and I had to pay my lawyer to call and apologize for his behavior. I was like, you better not send me a bill for this. I'm like trying to like calm everybody down, and they're like, you're a liar. I was like, oh, okay. Anyway, everything turned out okay, but I was like, you better not send me a bill for you having to apologize for your behavior.
So, I love it.
Will, we did a nice intro for you, but what's new in your world?
Yeah, it's I definitely agree with Eric that there's more deal flow. What's really interesting though is that everyone wants to be a contrarian until it's actually time to do some contrarian stuff. And, I'm under contract on a deal in a tertiary market, but the fundamentals are excellent. The demographics are excellent. Like population growth is like literally 10x the national rate. No supply, rent growth in place right now is almost 8% year over year. And, I've been talking to some institutional equity, and one of them, I had a conversation last week. I know for a fact they are torching somewhere between $30 and $50 million on a deal in the Sun Belt right now. And we pitched them the deal. They're like, that's great, really interesting. Love the story. And then, have a couple more calls. They're excited. And then it's like, well, investment committee's more comfortable investing in this Sunbelt market where we just torched 30 to 50 million of equity. I'm like, okay.
If we're going to lose money, we'd like to lose it on shit we already know.
Yeah, honestly, I think the hierarchy of deal structures, again, I worked in private equity, so I empathize with this deeply. It's like you want to make money in a consensus way, lose money in a consensus way. And then I actually think it's better to lose money non-consensus than make money consensus or non-consensus in a weird way, because if it doesn't work on a small bet, you're like, well, look, we are contrarian. Whereas if you make money in a non-consensus way, they're like, that was luck. So oddly, I think that's the way it works.
That's like the ultimate herd mentality of commercial real estate.
Did you pitch them the vibes? I know vibes is a big part of Brett's strategy.
What's that?
I said, I know vibes is a big part of your strategy. I was wondering how much Will pitched that.
No, it's just trust me. I've got a deal for you. It's all going to be fine. But I think, Will, you bring up a good point there. I mean, I think in the real estate business in general, it's the herd mentality. And so kind of one of my lines is when everybody's zigging, you kind of have to be zagging. So you're not competing with 30 people on the same site or on an acquisition deal. And I think if you got conviction around that for some of the reasons you laid out, you're going to be rewarded handsomely.
Well, I mean, if we can find the equity.
Okay, big boy. If you want to zag, let's take a trip to Pennsylvania.
I love Pennsylvania. So this week's episode, we're going to be discussing Washington Crown Center, not Washington Town Center, which is in Washington, Pennsylvania. This is about an 85-acre site. Looks like a broken mall. With a variety of different ownership here. And we're going to dive into that in a little bit more detail on what we like about it, what maybe are some challenges. And the ultimate question here is, are we buyers?
Well, you're a big zagger. Let's hear about it.
The property has a variety of tenants that I've never heard of before. I think the one that I like the most is Ollie's Good Cheap Stuff. There's a Marshall's in there. The total square footage of the building is about 435 square feet, so a very, very large center. And I think the play here, 435,000 square feet. That would be a very small center.
Yeah, at 435 square feet, it needs to be at least 3 times this size.
Yeah, this would be overparked if it was 435 square feet. So, and you've got, as I mentioned earlier, you've got some separate ownership. What looks like some kind of anchor department stores have blown out on both ends of the building. So I think here, Washington, Pennsylvania is about 30 minutes southwest of Pittsburgh, and about 2 hours from Punxsutawney. Is that how you pronounce it? Isn't that where like the groundhog comes out? Okay, good. So I think if you're close to that, it's got to be a winner, in my opinion. But, I think that the play here is suburban or ex-urban Pittsburgh. And I think Pittsburgh's doing pretty well. Will can get me on track if that's out of line, but I think Pittsburgh's kind of holding in there pretty well.
Well, I'd say that you missed the biggest part of this, which is that, Rural King, which I think is the new Taylor Sheridan show on Paramount, is a trend here too.
Very good point there. And who doesn't like Yellowstone, or the guy that made it? Doesn't he have a giant ranch down in Texas somewhere?
He does, and he leases it to the production company at above market rates. Yeah. But yes, no, to your point, Pittsburgh has undergone somewhat of a renaissance. It's because, especially in the knowledge economy of the last, decade or so, there's quite a lot of tech with Carnegie Mellon. So, Uber's headquartered there, or not headquartered there, obviously, but Uber and Waymo had a big, operation there. There's quite a lot of office vacancy in the downtown core, but, multifamily is doing all right. And you have probably the nicest baseball stadium in the MLB there, owned by maybe the worst owner.
I like that.
Yeah, that is a good stadium.
I haven't been, but it's on the list.
I think the thing that Brett, I don't know if you do this, but I think this would be a unique business process when you do offering memorandum packages. Make a few of the things misspelled. So if you look at the site plan under separate ownership,
right?
I think that makes things stand out, catches attention. That might be something that you guys could work into your program.
You think typos as a marketing strategy is something CBRE is working on?
That would never happen on our team. But that'd be a good test to see if anyone's actually reading the OMs, which I'm convinced that nobody does, considering we make a very concerted effort to put some information in, and then 800 people reach out to ask that exact question.
This listing came in and the senior brokers were like, me, a mall? All right, send it to the intern, have them put the package together. And this shit just went straight from the intern's desk out to print.
I do like how they spent at least 1,000 words before the word mall showed up in this thing. It's like buried way down here. I'm like, wait, is this a mall? And it's definitely a mall.
All right, so I've got a thought and then a question for our guests. The first thought here, it looks like this was built in 1969 and renovated in 1999. First thing that stands out to me is I bet you've got cast iron pipes under there. And I would bet they did not replace them in 99 because they would have been 30 years old at that point and probably wouldn't do that. Now, maybe they haven't. So first concern is sort of cast iron pipes. If I'm looking at this, I'm going to want to make sure I'm paying a plumber to go and inspect those sewer lines so we're not dealing with a bunch of corroded stuff underneath. And then
isn't asbestos an issue too here if it's 1969?
Yeah, I think you're going to have 9x9 asbestos tiles. You'll have lead-based paint. You'll have like all of the problems that you would want. It's all of the bullshit. This is like Airbnb. It's all of the bullshit with none of the upside. So I guess the question here for Will, you've got this site and you can see how it's demised. One end anchor is M&C discount. And then the other is a car dealership, which fine, but you don't really own the anchors. I guess you could say Rural King is an anchor, but so in this transaction, you own the middle of the mall, but you don't own the two end caps. I assume that matters to you to some degree when you're master planning this thing, if you're going to do something with it. How do you think about that?
Well, I'm honestly surprised the brokers didn't pitch this as a data center play, given that Amazon just spent $650 million on a nuclear power plant. That is 4 hours away, but most people don't know where this is. So you could say it's close by, and I think it passes the sniff test. So I think another big miss by the brokerage firm. It's tricky. I mean, you look at, on page 18 of the OM, I mean, it looks like there was a murder committed on the roofs. Like there's just red stuff all over the place. It's truly heinous.
Well, I did go on the Washington County, Pennsylvania website and just clicked on employment opportunities to piggyback off Will's comment. The first one is juvenile probation monitor, assistant district attorney, and then part-time correctional officer. So that might be to address some of the murders on roofs, I would think.
Brad, are you thinking a mall to prison conversion? Is that your strategy?
Right, for-profit prison here. Is that a thing?
The depressing part of this thing is that I'm older than this mall.
Do you look at this mall and think, man, that thing looks like shit? And you go, oh, hang on.
Wait a minute here. I think, I don't know, I always, when you see these, if you look at the aerial, and in many markets, the mall becomes sort of this catalyst that everything develops around it, and you get office buildings and hotels and residential, and you look here and you see a lot of trees and a lot of grass and single family homes. So for whatever this has been, 52 years of this thing in existence, it has had nearly zero halo effect on anything around it, which shows you probably the lack of gravitas of the property. The big thing about malls is that they're can be almost impossible to extricate yourself from, because there are this Byzantine web of reciprocal easement agreements via these anchor spaces. So oftentimes the anchors, which you don't own, which is what we have here, at least two of them, will have controls over the property. When these things got built with a Sears and a J.C. Penney, back in the 60s, Sears would, wielded so much. Sears was the Amazon of the day, and J.C. Penney was the Google, and they said, if you would like to have us at your property, you'll agree to all of our standards, which means we control everything that happens in the common areas, meaning the parking lots, and what happens oftentimes within the mall. So the hallways within a mall, the tenancy that's within a mall, what you can do. You can't tear down buildings. You can't change it a lot of times without the approval of these anchors. So it's more than just getting the property at a fair price. You got to figure out how to extricate yourself from these almost private zoning laws that come along with these things.
Yes, I think on that comment, I mean, I think people read headlines here that, deconverting a mall, which sounds easy when you read the headline. But to your point, Eric, when you get into the minutia of it, it is, borderline impossible.
Yeah, it can be really difficult. And then I've seen instances where there might be, one holdout Orange Julius-esque teriyaki chicken guy in the mall that or a handful of them, where the owner is then required to keep the entire mall open for. So that means AC, security, lighting, etc. So these can be a furnace for cash. So for those of you that have too fat of a wallet, sometimes buying a mall can be a good cure.
Well, one of the things I always think about with these types of malls, especially in Pennsylvania, which is a pretty high property tax state, is what are the property taxes? And so you might think, well, I'm sure I could buy this cheaply and reassess it at a much lower value and limit my burn. You would be incorrect. The previous owner already did that. This property is, as of 2023, total assessed at under $4 million or $9 a foot, which is truly something. And Eric, you can probably opine on this. At some point, the assessed value for this had to be $50-60 million.
Yes, had to be.
Yeah, it's $9 a foot now. And, I will say it is actually cash flowing. There is, 220 whole American $1,000 of net operating income, which I'm sure the CapEx and any renewal LCs, I'm sure it's sufficient to pay all those.
Yeah. Will, let's say you could buy this for $1. Do you want to own it for $1?
No.
Actually, I don't know. Maybe. I will say that I did like that you are only 8 miles away from a large harness racing track and slot machine casino. So maybe there's some sort of adjacency there. Girdley, I feel like that's up your alley. Like, I think maybe we could do a JV here. Like, could we do staging for the harness? If we have the horses like in the hallways, you know, like, is that something we could do?
Business, I'm totally in. Let's do it.
Yeah, maybe we could use it as like a barn.
Well, the whole backside of the thing appears to be.
I think we got to start adding the occasional listing broker to this podcast and say, all right, man, go ahead and defend this.
You can put the horses here in the former movie theater in the back, which is laid out such that it's totally hidden, that you can't see it from the roadside. Difficult.
I think let's talk about the redeeming. One of them is the incomes are kind of surprisingly high for this area. 10-mile population, 103,000, which is thin, but the incomes are 105,000 average household income, which is significantly higher than you typically see in a rural area like this. What else do you like about it, Will?
So I actually am surprised the brokers got that, because I'm looking online and Washington, PA is a census place. It's not actually a town or a city. And per Washington, PA, it says median household income of 50 grand, median property value of 108,000. So this could be sort of on the edge. They've cast a wide radius. Mm-hmm. Maybe outside Washington, PA, you've got higher incomes, but that doesn't quite line up with what the census place itself is telling me.
Well, your numbers make more sense because this borders West Virginia and Northeast Ohio. It's not like we're bordering, Long Island or something there.
Easy there, Girdley. We got a deal closed in West Virginia about a month ago, so I'm pretty sure that makes us the number one market share of all brokerage firms in West Virginia across all asset classes.
Yeah, Girdley, take your big city out of here. Brett is a man of the people doing deals in West Virginia.
Whoa, I live in San Antonio, man.
No, that's very true. I'm sitting actually pretty close to I-81 right now.
So Will's backing me up on this because I know Eric and Elliot were about to eviscerate me on that comment. So I'm glad that you're the guest and they've got to be nice to you.
Yeah, I was. I'm glad Will came into your defense. You were about to get smoked.
Yeah, right. But you got to be nice to the guest. So thanks for providing me cover.
Yeah, you do have to be nice to the guest. All right. So Eric,
I'm generally pretty sensitive to that because I'm from DC, and when I met my wife, one of her best friends goes, she's like, one of my best friends is from DC as well, and I go, oh great, where is she from? She was from Annapolis, which is literally the capital of another state. So I'm generally pretty sensitive, but I can see how you could have West Virginia as DC MSA.
So 83 acres.
Yeah. How do we make money on this? That's my question.
Yeah, 83 acres. You got a rural king. You got a bunch of asphalt. Actually, it looks like concrete. What is the highest and best use here? Is it single family housing?
Yeah. So let's assume you can get rid of all the restrictive lease agreements or ROFRs or whatever existed from the anchors. And this is just improvements on land. And it's currently a mall. Let's sort of assume that you could do whatever you want with it. Eric, you've got some, not an unlimited budget, but you've got enough cash to turn this into something interesting. If we sort of set those dollars aside for a second, what would you do with the current building? Is that where the value is? Or do you just scrape this thing and redevelop it as a neighborhood or lifestyle center, something like that?
One idea is leave the concrete in place, build houses on that and market it as low maintenance. Maybe an active adult, low maintenance. You don't have to mow the grass. Everything's concrete. But I think just looking at the aerial and nothing else and seeing the lack of development, there's no out parcels to the mall. There's no, there's no Chick-fil-A out front even. So to me, it just screams lack of demand in that the anchor is changed to a car dealer. Marshall's is there. Okay. But just looking at the aerial, a lot of trees. The only thing you see is single family housing. To me, that smells like highest and best use of if you could tear it down and build 83 acres of homes. There may be some highway adjacent kind of stuff, gas station, hotel. I don't, but it certainly doesn't feel retail.
Brett, on your BTR deals, how much space? I'm trying to see what the square footage is. If you could take all of it, right? Because what's being sold here is just the middle section, but I think the middle section is one of the least valuable pieces of real estate I've ever seen. And so if you could have all of it, you could have the end caps and the parking and all that stuff. How much land do you need if you're going to do a townhome thing, like a lower cost townhome product?
So the math on that usually works depending on municipality or location, 8 to 12 units an acre for townhome product. And then it's about 4 per acre for detached single family. So just assuming the 4 per acre, you'd be at 332 single family homes, which seems like a lot from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be increasing the population of the town by 3%.
Well, and I did just notice for Will's benefit here, it looks like just to the south and west, the Washington Wild Things have a baseball stadium. And so maybe, I'm trying to figure out what team that's affiliated with, if any. But then, Eric, maybe you could do kind of a repeater, maybe a little bit lower scale repeater of the Battery in Atlanta here, if we can figure out some more info on the Washington Wild Things.
It shouldn't be a problem.
They're in the Frontier League, which rejected me at one point.
You don't sound salty about that at all.
It could be a Buc-ee's. Maybe just buy it, wait for Buc-ee's to expand to Pennsylvania.
I think to me, like the answer is some sort of industrial use, because you're actually not in a terrible industrial location. I mean, you have good access to 70. You can get to 79.
I like that.
376. Like, that's all right. I mean, again, I don't know how if M&T discount's going to be okay with a ton of trucks coming in. We'll see if they're still actually there. But I mean, to me, that's sort of the only option here, because the town's just too small for housing. I mean, 380 units. Like, I don't generally want to build that in my areas, which have 500,000 people. That's just a lot of new supply. I mean, how many apartments do you think have been built in this town? Purpose-built apartments in the last 25 years. Like, I would bet
I did scroll around on CoStar for that before the podcast, Will, and it looks like there hadn't been anything built here since 1960. I mean, it looks like a lot of Section 8, right, kind of tax credit stuff. So, Elliot, I don't know. That could be a good opportunity for you to jump in here.
What about converting it to a single family home?
Oh, just a compound?
And just having, 470,000 square feet and get your own Florsheim shoes and your own, your very own teriyaki chicken. How about that?
Will, you could splash some of that baseball cash around, buy this place, turn it into a compound. This would be a hell of a spot for you, man.
So I have had an idea for building a resort targeted at Gen X people, which would be all the brands that were around when we were kids, but that aren't around anymore. So it'd be like Orange Julius. I don't even know. Just think of all the ones like Orange Julius and all the stuff that you would go
Girdley
to.
in a Chess King outfit.
I literally was just thinking.
Yeah, doesn't exist anymore.
Everybody wearing Stussy t-shirts.
Yeah. So what if we turned it into a mall that was basically a replica of the 1980s, and freaking rich 50-year-old Gen X people show up to relive their childhood wearing Vans and Power Peralta skateboards.
I like that more than a single family home where it's like a very depressing Eloise de Plaza.
Well, I'm going to go back to Will's comment about an industrial center, and kind of how do you maybe playing the game a little bit better with these separate owners. If you put an industrial center in and had trucks running through there 24 hours a day, that might be a good motivation to get them out of there.
Brett, did you not hear what Girdley said?
What's that?
This is the single best real estate idea of all time.
Seriously, I was just
recreate the 80s mall and charge admission.
I was literally just about to say that, and I think that's a great idea. I'm not joking, you guys. I love that idea.
All right, and I'll tell you what we name it. Here's what we name it. We name it after the mall from Back to the Future, and we call it the Twin Pines Mall.
Yes.
And one day out of the year, you have the future change, and we rename everything the Lone Pine Mall, because that's what happens in the movie.
All right. And do you think we can get some?
This is not a prepared bit, by the way. I'm making this up on the spot, just so you guys know. I didn't come up with this idea.
Do you think we can get Tiffany to come to the grand reopening and sing? I don't think she's busy right now. I mean,
yeah,
definitely. We get them. We get the Bengals. They're all here. They'll all be here.
And so we think we're alone now.
And what would this?
There doesn't seem to be anyone around, definitely right now.
There's nobody here. No, you are alone here. You are.
All right, do not publish this. I don't want any competition for this idea out there.
Yeah, this is groundbreaking stuff.
Well,
here.
then we could also maybe use we could get like a DeLorean racetrack kind of out on the outskirts of it. And all the infill stuff would be kind of all the defunct retailers from the 80s. Circuit City, we could go get some flat screen TVs or some CDs.
Yeah.
Well, that's not plausible.
Yeah, you know how when people have, they make you put on booties when you come into their house? We make everyone wear LA lights.
I like it. We could put a sports
Really
authority
serve
in there.
tab. Be terrific.
Yeah.
We only serve tab.
Sorry, we don't have water. You have to drink tab.
All right, so here's what's going on with this mall. There's another mall kind of thing. So this mall is located southwest-ish of the major city of Washington, Pennsylvania. And in the northeast, there's another kind of mall that's got, Lowe's and Kohl's and Target and Texas Roadhouse and Olive Garden, all of Michael's favorite restaurants, Krispy Kreme. Is there a Chili's here for you? No, there's a Cracker Barrel. Clearly, this is where, if you were going to go and buy something, I imagine if you're a kid, you grow up here and you think, God, do you remember when Crown Center was the shit? And now it's just this depressing nowhere town. And the shopping happens in this northeast area. So there's no scenario where I think it makes any sense to try and spend the money to compete with that. It just doesn't make that doesn't track. So yeah, you convert it to industrial, you come in, you raise the clear height. Again, we're talking about if you have infinite dollars. I think that's the move. And then you threaten the anchors and say, you're either going to sell or we're going to pack this fucker with trucks and good luck running your business.
There's a hard way and an easy way we can do this. It's up to you from here.
Right. There's a hard way and an easy way. I think you put in a fireworks store, a strip club, and a truck depot, and you just say, like, good luck selling cars here, dummy, and you see if you can clear them out.
Sounds plausible.
I love that.
Yeah, and what's interesting is you actually have Robinson Town Center, which is like I think it's a pretty high-end mall, sort of southwest Pittsburgh. It's only like 25 miles from here. So that's actually I think that one's still doing okay. I haven't looked in forever, but that's right at the juncture of the 4 interchanges by the Pittsburgh airport. So it's like obviously the far superior location, even though it's only like 25, 30 miles.
You could try to get a relocation for the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum, which appears just a little bit north and east. That could be a good alternative use.
You guys want to place a wager on if this sells and what it sells at? I would bet you it trades for $100,000.
I was going to say, I bet like Kohan or Namdar buys it, but Kohan owned it. They already sold it.
So if you read the description of the group that shall remain nameless that owns this thing, they own identifies and acquires core assets across global markets while working diligently to preserve and maximize capital. So I think core market for sure, and it would fit the bill of kind of other centers in London or Tokyo or places like that. So I mean, I think that's this is a clearly in the business plan.
I mean, it's Alamoina Mall.
Right. The Grove in LA, Eric.
You guys should see the pictures on the shopwashingtoncrown.com website. The general vibe their website portrays does not quite seem accurate. There's a lot of very well-dressed, happy, smiling people.
Okay, one last idea. Indoor harness racing.
Yes.
Okay.
Ooh.
Okay.
Because what if you want to do harness racing, but it's raining?
Exactly. I think a lot of people are asking that question.
Or what about like a recreation of the Coliseum? And we could do like gladiator type stuff with horse racing and everything like that. You know, we could have like.
Are you talking like actual like snuff films here?
That's a little. Brett, come on.
Well, okay.
I mean, harness racing is a good idea.
No, but you could do the harness racing. Didn't they do harness racing in the Coliseum? I mean, didn't you see Gladiator or Spartacus?
Yeah, that's.
Holy shit! Is there a deli called Deli?
Yeah, but they also had
the Ben-Hur Mall.
They had weapons. Like, yeah.
I mean, it seems like any buyer is probably going to dig into this and discover, like you said, Eric, just a mismatch of restrictions and lease terms and all that kind of stuff that just hamstring the whole thing. Yeah, I mean, Marcus Aurelius had a dream that was Washington Town Center, and this is not it.
Well, so going back to Elliot's question on value, this thing is the owner would have to pay you to take this.
I'd like to change my vote. I do not think it sells. I think this thing eventually just falls in on itself and it goes full supernova. And then they have to turn the keys over to the town and they say, you fucking figure it out. And then the town has to pay someone to step in and help them.
100%.
Who is Crown Chrysler Dodge? If that's a local guy, that ends up being the owner.
Yeah.
You think that's your buyer? You think he just turns it into a car complex and he puts a Dodge there and a Kia and a whatever?
Yeah, and just hangs on, collects rent from Rural King and Marshalls, lets Ollie pay till they run out, and then shuts the light out when he leaves.
I think that's probably right.
All right, so we're going to put this in the.
I do like that the website still has the previous owner's collateral on it.
That's just being
Put this
efficient.
in the too hard to make money with category. I think that's where it ended up.
Yes.
Washington.
Yeah, this is an uphill fight.
It's a hard pass for me.
It's been an uphill fight since 1965.
Would you rather try to make money on this or go flip houses in a tertiary market city?
I'd flip houses in a tertiary market, and it's not even close.
Okay, that tells you what you need to do.
Yeah, flip houses.
Yeah, I'd buy trap houses, kick the squatters out, fix them, and flip them. That is a better existence than trying to take on this defunct mall.
And the worst part is, no offense to where you are, Will, but who wants to be spending a bunch of time in Washington, PA? Like, hey, what do you want to do tonight? Well, we can go to the Chili's, or we can head over to Wheeling and see them ride around on little cars behind horses and bet on them. Like,
see, there's Big City Girly pissing off our two listeners from Washington, PA.
It's a core audience here, Girdley.
I'm here because I represent the elitist snob category of our listener groups.
100 true fans, Girdley. 100 true fans.
You definitely give off a certain I drive a Subaru and I'm better than you vibe.
What I think if we had two listeners in Washington, PA, that'd be like 10% of the entire population. So we got that going for us, which is nice.
Look at, just the economic powerhouses around this site. You got Youngstown, Ohio, Akron, Canton, just booming. Parkersburg, West Virginia. Morgantown.
Well, maybe we could get LeBron James to buy it since he's from Akron.
Because Akron's already been fixed up. He's looking for the next project.
I mean, it may just be a personal problem, but like I get emotionally sad for people when I see assets like this, or I go into like a business and like it could be a great restaurant, but they're just screwing it up. Like I just feel so sad for people handed a bad bag like this. So anyway, I don't know what.
Everyone involved chose to be here, though.
Yeah, this is all consensual. This is 100% consent. Everyone's here on their free will. Everyone
chose to be involved.
I have empathy when I'm not supposed to, and I don't have empathy when I'm supposed to. I don't know if that's a definition of autism or whatever, but like that's what goes on with me.
Yeah. Eric, how much equity do you think the original developer put up for this? I think the answer is 0, right?
You mean in 1962? Yeah, I think those deals were go out and that was in the Great America Mall development era of stake out a interchange. And this is kind of in DeBartolo country. Stake out an interchange.
Yeah, it is Youngstown.
And get the fellas from Sears and Penny's to come over, take that to the bank, sell the land, give the land to Sears or Penny's, or lease it to them, and go out and build away. It was one of the great American businesses, except it's run its course. I bet this was bumping in 1971. And probably peaked in 1971. And I bet it ran through the 80s and then it's been on a decline since.
Yeah, I just looked it up. The original developer merged with Penn REIT in 2003. So that was this Crown development. Okay. And just a murderer's row of locations on the malls that they owned.
By the way, I do think the 80s retro mall concept, I think that's got legs. I don't think this is the spot to do it. Nobody wants to drive to West Virginia to go to my retro mall, but I think it could work.
Sharper image.
Are you a quitter on harness racing?
Me?
Yeah. Indoor harness racing.
I don't think it's
Hear me out.
Those horses go pretty fast. They'd be bumper horses.
I'm going back to the harness racing against the DeLorean. That could be a good draw from the Back to the Future deal.
I'll read a review of this mall while Will's doing research.
Oh yeah. No, sorry. I was going to say, like, I don't think this is that far from Falling Water. So could we somehow get a Frank Lloyd Wright tie-in? But it's 65 miles away.
Yeah, so I went to Falling Water. I think it was 2 months ago. It was incredible. It was very, very cool. It is not near anything. Mill Run, Pennsylvania is very hard to get to.
Is it like a
Falling Water?
Yeah. Is it a residence?
The family donated it to a trust that basically runs as a museum now, and
so you can go inside
town. But yeah, it's not privately owned anymore.
Oh, that's cool. That'd be worth a trip.
Yeah, it's beautiful in there. The visitor center looks nice. I don't mean to besmirch the entire area by talking poorly about this mall, but Mill Run, seeing Falling Water, especially as a real estate person, that architecture, it's this really cool mid-century modern kind of deal, but it's built in the 30s, and it must have felt like something from the future when they put it together. And all the little details inside about how the windows open or how things move around, it was just totally, totally wild. The Kaufman family owned a chain of department stores, and they bought that whole area and used it. And I think it was
probably here. They were probably here at one point.
It may have been in the Crown Center at one point.
Kaufman's.
And then, the father passed, and they donated it they turned it into a museum, and they seeded it with a bunch of money. It costs a ton to maintain. But it's beautiful if you are even at all interested.
It's very, very cool.
Yeah.
So we're actually also not far from Nemacolin, because that's why I knew Falling Water was near here, because we went there one time when I stayed at Nemacolin.
Well, do you want to close this one out with a review of this mall?
It's makes me sad.
Oh, no, I'm going to read the review.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I thought you were asking for my review. Yeah.
Dirty, falling apart, and a very weird smell.
Sounds about right.
A handful of stores open. The rest are papered up and out of business. The food court has one single location. The coin candy machines are full of faded candy that clearly need to be thrown out. The only somewhat useful part of the mall was the digital vending machine selling phone cords, charging blocks, and wipes, and for some reason also eyelashes. Do not use the bathrooms. They are dirty. The doors do not lock correctly. The fan sounds like a jet engine. Sink water pressure is very low, and the toilets barely flush. This would be the perfect place to film a movie if you need an abandoned mall.
There you go. There's the idea. A little nugget at the end.
Harness racing movie set.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. I think we've reached some semblance of a logical conclusion here, gents. You got any closing notes on this one?
And we call it the aristocrats.
Oh my gosh!
All right, I think we're good. Unless you guys have anything else.
We
That's the
managed to cover that.
All right, thanks boys.